can you set air pressures?
You can change air pressures. If you can get a couple of guys over there to lift the car up enough to maybe reach in and turn some wedge in it or take some out or
tools.
Something like that, you can get away from that. You can get away with that, but it's pretty much a no jack, no wrench deal.
Sure.
Yeah, the only
Some guys try to get away with it. Some guys get away with it, and they'll sink a jack over there and a lug wrench or whatever, some wrenches, and crawl under and make changes. But for the most part, they tell you they don't want you to do that, and most of the time, once you cross the fence and you get into the staging area, that's what you're racing with.
Yeah, the only time that I've seen is that if you have to make a change, you can't make a chassis change, you can't make a tire change, you can't make anything like that. But if you have mechanical, electrical, something that is mechanical wise besides a chassis, you have to have an IMCA official come over there, and so take the top of the where the MSD is, or maybe brake fluid or something like that is down on his floor or something like that. I mean, but anytime that you touch that car, once you're inside that fence area, an IMC official has to be there. Right. If they see you working on that car, it doesn't matter if you take a Zeus fitting out, you're done.
So you're in the lineup, you're sitting there in staging. You've been there for 45 minutes. There's been several races on the track. You roll out. There's 20 cars in your heat race, 15, 16, 20 cars in your heat race. What goes through your mind when you're sitting 17th in a 20-car field for a heat race and you've only got 15 laps to get to the transfer positions?
You want an honest, straightforward answer?
I don't know. Do I?
You're praying to God that the leader spins out and takes a whole bunch of them with him.
Well, I mean, when you're sitting that far back, you don't want to sound like a jerk, but you kind of have to hope for something like that to give you to help your odds.
You really have to hope for some attrition when you start that far back, and especially now that the whole crate motor deal is coming around and the cars are so close and so competitive. It's tough. It is really, really tough to pass cars. You'll see, it won't be uncommon for you to see guys come out of the second or the third row and battle for the lead. But there's only going to be a couple of guys over that 3-day period that you see come from way back and really, really have something. It doesn't happen later. It's so tight competition, and everybody's so evenly matched most of the time that you just don't see that.
Yeah, Dustin Katie was here earlier, and he was saying pretty much the same thing. Like, man, if you're going to pass, it's going to be the guys that are passing early on in the heat races. You don't see a lot of it later in the heat races because the track's burned up. Everybody's, kind of on the edge and wanting to go.
The biggest movers in years past that you've seen come from way back, the guys did it, as much as I hate to say it, the rough track was a huge advantage to them. And you would see these guys just total kamikaze through the 2-foot deep hole that everybody else is deliberately going around.
Rob May style.
Bicycling up on 2 wheels, and they're completely up off the ground. And, they're just destroying their race car. But at the same time, they're gaining position. Whereas everybody else is trying to race on the racing surface or what's left of it, and they're not really going anywhere. Those are the guys that you're going to see as your biggest movers. But if there's no holes in the racetrack mirrored from top to bottom, you don't see a lot of passing. You'll see groups of 3 or 4 cars together battling with each other, but they're battling with each other in those groups of 3 or 4. There's not going to be one standout that just takes off and runs. The biggest standout that's going to take off and run is the guy that starts on the front row and gets a good start and gets away from everybody, because the air issue comes in down there, and these cars don't have enough power, especially with the crate motors and the small cubic inch motors, to drag another car in a draft, so to speak, like you would see with an asphalt car. So what happens is the guy that breaks out by himself and has clean air drives away.
And that is true.
He'll drive away to an 8 or 10 or 12, sometimes even a 15-car length lead. And if you don't have any cautions, once you let him go and get that couple of car lengths lead, it's almost possible.
Done.
Yeah, I mean, you're battling. You're racing for second.
Yeah.
When when you talk about the crates, is a lot of people. You got crate lovers and you have open lovers. Now, the question is, as I should already probably know this answer, what are you...
I was waiting for you to ask.
What are you taking down there? Because we know by the time the third and fourth day, it gets really, really dry slick. Are you taking your open motor?
I'm taking the open motor, but I've got a special open motor.
I know you do. So, I mean, are we basically... so you're taking the open motor into the third and fourth day. If you still have that open motor in your car, are you going to just shut the secondaries off and just run a two-barrel? Run a two-barrel?
Not a turbo.
No, I have an open motor that's specifically designed to run with the crate motors. It's a crate killer, is what most people call them, and it's basically the same thing as a crate motor.
Just a little, just has that little bit more.
It doesn't have the aluminum heads, obviously, but weight-wise, it's just within a couple of pounds of a crate motor. The torque and horsepower curve is really, really similar to a crate motor. I've got a little bit more horsepower than a crate motor does.
Now,
but for the most part, I run a crate carburetor on it. I run the same size headers that the crate guys do. I'm doing pretty much the same thing they are. And there's 7 or 8 times that I've got to race this car now. I've had this motor in at every race, and I've been really competitive with the crate motors. Ran right side by side with them most of the time. Nobody's running off and hiding from me. And the reason why, I think even with an open motor, I went a different route with the open motor than most of the open guys do. I'm using my open motor like a crate motor. And I'm driving it like a crate motor, and I'm gearing it like a crate motor, and it's a lot more competitive against the crate motors than the big open motor guys that you generally are used to seeing. They're just out there blowing their tires off, and the crate motors are running away from them.
Because
Doug, I've known you a long time. I have never seen you drive anything like a crate motor.
Well,
It's wide open. It's BA fast, and let's rock and roll right now, baby. Don't give me that crate motor drive. You got to be smooth and finesse it. That's not Doug Davenport. You got dents in your floorboards.
Believe it or not, that's why I did this motor program, is because I have to drive it like a crate motor. I don't have any choice. It's cammed like a crate motor. It's got the same carburetor. It's got the same torque and horsepower curve. I have to drive it like a crate motor. There's no other way about it. I don't have the big monster Cornet, mash my foot in it and blow everything in the world up like I used to.
Well, okay.
you mean like at Willamette Speedway?
The first couple nights that I drove it, it was a real eye-opener. I can honestly tell you that. It took me several laps to figure it out, and I really had to restructure the input that I gave to the race car. But the more I drive it, I'll tell you right now, I'm an open motor guy, and I've been against the crate motors all along, but the more research that I've done and the more people that I've talked to that know a lot more than I do, I will have a crate motor next year for everything that I do for IMCA. And the reason why is what a lot of guys are missing, we're running on a tire that is designed around the crate motor.
That I was just gonna sit there and say that is that you're literally dead on. When Hoosier made this G60, they're not made for burning them off and laying a ton of rubber and stuff down. They're a fake tire. They're a synthetic tire that if you overheat them, they glaze over. You're done. I mean, if you sit there and say the crate's up at Sunset, okay, you can sit there and run 3 or 4 cautions kind of in a row and be kind of fine if you have a crate. But you go and you have an open motor, well, your starts are gonna suck. Even if you start on the front row, unless you get a really good jump, and that's hard to do, especially there, and those tires are glazed over. You're going into turn 1, and guess what? That car's not going to be how you just were, 6 or 7 laps ago under green. So you're right. I mean, those motors and stuff are made for a crate, 400 horse, non-spinning tire motor.
Well, okay, we've talked about a lot of stuff, and before we got to get to commercial here pretty soon. But before we go, I got to ask you an important question: did you give your car a fuel line that'll hold an extra gallon of gas, and is that thing shaped like a bullet?
just come in the studio and slap him.
I tried to play all by the rules.
Well,
I do walk over it with a soft cloth every night before I go in the house and go to bed and tell it that it's the only one, and I promise you're the only one. And so far, that's always
Are you so when you get down there, are you gonna roll it out of the trailer? Are you gonna look at it? Now, have you named your car?
I named the late model, and that turned out to be a big flop. So I think I'm just going to go back to my nickname on the rope, and that's where we're going to leave it.
Perfect.
So you're not gonna call it. You're not gonna kiss her at night before, especially. I mean, you know how Vegas is. Vegas is Sin City. Now you can call her Lucille and give her a hug and a kiss before you go to bed at night.
Not in Vegas. It's
Not
got to
in
be
Vegas.
something like Cashmere or Cherry. You know what I mean?
Listen, it's not a. Listen, just call it Lucille because that's classy.
If you ask some of the guys that I've ran around with in the past, they don't even have a name. They just want money.
Sounds just like the race car.
Oh, Doug.
Right on. Doug, we want to say thanks for calling in, man. It's always good to have you on the show. We appreciate you, and we will be seeing you down at Vegas, and we want to wish you the best of luck before we get out of here, bud.
We'll be there, and look forward to seeing you guys down there.
Right on, man. Have a good night. Thanks for calling. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, you guys too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wide-eyed and bushy-tail pushing the cushion at Willamette Speedway. He's talking about, I got to pedal like a crate motor. I'm going to go down to Vegas. I'm going to go down to Vegas where it's really, really wide, and it's a half mile, and I'm going to crate, and I'm going to...
Are you watching him right now?
Are you kidding me right
watching
now?
him?
This is why I wish we had this thing on live streaming, because when he
It's
was
coming.
saying that...
It's coming.
Right. And when he was saying that, the three of us would look at each other like,
Bull.
Really?
Really?
Are we?
Yeah.
Are we all hearing the same thing here?
Didn't I talk smack about how he didn't have enough balls to sit there and run even higher over into turn one? I believe we were on the air, and I looked at you, Corey, and said, I don't know if he can sit up there and run any higher. What does he do? He scrapes turn 3 and 4 wall. I'm thinking,
It's true.
well, I guess
Yeah.
he just
Yeah.
figured that
Yeah.
one out.
Yep. He does like the top of the
He
racetrack.
does. He's a good dude.
And to have his input, going down there, 9 times, that's somebody that has knowledge of what that track is going to do. You talk about, you talk about, having that knowledge. During the day, it's going to be warmer. I haven't looked at the forecast and stuff for it to be down
It's
there, but
gonna
I
be
believe
warm.
it's going to be into the 60s, maybe 70s.
I think it's gonna be a little warmer than that, and they're saying 50 to 60s at night.
Yeah, well, it's weird because by the time it gets to 6 o'clock, it drops,
Right.
and then it just gets
It cools
cold
fast,
Yeah, and it's on the outskirts of the strip and everything else, so you don't have much of stuff around you. So when the wind picks up,
Oh, it's windy out there for sure. I mean, if you've ever been to Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you know that the wind out there does affect a lot of stuff around you. But
yeah, it does.
It's flat out there. There's nothing to break the wind. It's
right.
the desert.
There's some hills out there, but they're nothing like we have around here. But guys,
No,
let's
they
go
have
over.
they have
let's-
rolling mountains. That's
Right.
what they're called.
Yeah.
From
let's
back
get
east.
let's get to commercial real quick and take care of this, and we're gonna take a quick break here on Northwest Dirt News. We'll be right back at you from the Jetstream Aqua Massage Studio. It's been crazy. Stick around, guys. We'll be right back in 3.5.
Hi, I'm Corey with my wife Sandy. We'd like to invite you to Jetstream Aqua Massage. At Jetstream, you get a quality massage, nobody touches you, and you don't get wet. Best of all, it's only $1 per minute. Come see what it's all about.
I've been coming in here about 3 times a week for the last 6 months, and it's just a whole new world when I walk out of here. I highly recommend this place. $20 for 20 minutes, unbeatable.
Crocker's Cars, located in Lebanon, Oregon. We've been providing the finest pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, RVs since 1983. Crocker's Cars has been in business for 31 years, offering quality used vehicles. With our experience and professionalism and the no-hassle buy-in, customers really do come first here at Crocker's Cars. Crocker's Cars, where quality is the difference. Give us a call, 541-258-2175, or look us up on the web at crockerscars.com for a full line of inventory. And make sure you mention that you're here on Northwest Dirt News. Are you tired of low wages? Have you ever thought about getting a commercial driver's license? Then let Northwest Trucking Academy, located in Tanza, Oregon, be your source. Earn up to $800 to $1,200 a week. At Northwest Trucking Academy, our trained instructors are